Hello and welcome to this very special webinar that Eggplant is doing in collaboration with Forrester Research and is all about how putting intelligence into your continuous testing can help you address the key testing challenges that digital businesses face today. My name is Anthony, I'm the Chief Product and Operations Officer here at Eggplant, and I'm honored to be joined by Diego, who is a VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester, focused on DevOps and testing. So the testing world has dramatically changed over the past few years. Digital transformation, customer experience, continuous delivery, and DevOps have made quality and testing into business critical functions, not just the maybe unglamorous part of the development process it's been in the past. But while the context around testing is really very different, has testing itself changed as it's become a more important part of the business? Or are we still really just doing the same things under a different label? For example, have the goals of testing changed? Have testing methods changed? Or, are we doing things differently to meet these different goals and to keep up? And most interestingly, do IT and the business have the same priorities for testing? So to answer these questions, we worked with Diego and Forrester to conduct a survey of over 300 decision makers in the USA, UK, and Europe. And for the first time ever, we were talking not just to IT leaders, but also line of business leaders about testing, gathering their input, gathering their goals, their priorities. The results were a bit surprising and really super interesting. So in this webinar, Diego is going to present the highlights of that survey and his key takeaways for you test leaders in digital businesses. I'm then going to give a brief introduction to Eggplant and describe how by putting intelligence into your continuous testing, you can address the testing challenges faced by digital businesses today. And finally, we'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A with Diego. So without further ado, over to you, Diego.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for those of you all around the world, and thanks to Eggplant for having me today deliver this short webinar, Put Intelligence in Your Continuous Testing. So basically the data and the slides that I'm going to share are coming from a joint research that we did together with Eggplant. And what I'm going to be talking about that the piece that I'm going to be talking about around that research is a quick overview of the methodology that we use here in Forrester. The key findings of the methodology, basically we did a survey, we reached out to quite a number of people, as you will see, and adding to that some of the trends that I'm seeing in the market from a Forrester perspective, and end up with some recommendations. So, methodology summary, what we did is we conducted a custom online survey that was sent to over 310 decision makers, both in not just the IT role, but also business role, hitting mainly large firms. Geographically speaking, we covered basically the UK and the German, Austria, and Swiss countries in Europe, so 4 countries in Europe and the USA. Industries, basically all industries, including the main ones that we all know about, with employees above 1,000, company revenue over 200 million, and the roles that we were interviewing were the managers, directors, VP suite, so basically management level and above. And guys that could really give us a bit of, that have a perspective in their organization around their technology, software decisions in the company, in large B2C and B2B firms with knowledge about, basically their overall application development and testing practices and needs and requirements in the organization. So the first message that came clearly out is that, well, and I don't think this is surprising, should be surprising to any of you, is that customer experiences is a top priority for software development strategy. It is the top development strategy together with digital transformation, and will be for the next 2 years. But there's not always the same alignment sometimes around the goals between business and IT, and you can see that in the following data that I'm gonna show. So here you can see this confirms the point about improving customer experience. This is very much in line with overall Forrester's data, by the way. 49% of those responded, of those 310 to the question is, what is the most important goal or driver in your organization when you are planning or considering your software strategy? It's all around improving the customer experience. It's about of course, compliance, risk reduction, and improved security. I'm sure that risk and security bumped that driver up as well, and revenue growth, right? So it's all about it's all about and around the business. But it also, I also wouldn't neglect the employee productivity, which in Forrester we're starting to write a lot of research, basically finding out that happy employees, basically are important for happy clients. And so that employee productivity as a goal, although 39% is an important one. The next next data point, a smaller base, 156 responded to this question, but here's where we start seeing some of the differences, if you want, between business and IT. So of course, the biggest requirement that business always has is we want faster speed of delivery, right? Everybody talks about speed, and you can see that speed of application development and speed of testing cycles are crucial, right? Those are crucial, and they're rated actually. So we break these data between the points that show those that responded good, excellent, and those that responded average, fair, or poor, with the remaining bit. And you can see that, although 54% is not a bad, it's like more or less half of the respondents of those 156, but half of those respondents say, that put speed as one of the aspects that IT still is, dragging on a bit. And here instead, you can see where there starts to be a little bit of divergence between alignment between business and IT around the fact that, you can see the green and the blue bars here, where the blue bars are the business and the green bars are the IT. The biggest gap between the two, the biggest gaps are in improving the usability of the product. That's kind of, a very important, an important desired outcome for the business, together with improving the functionality, the quality of the functionality, and the performance. So it's all about the product from a quality, functional performance perspective, while IT, of course, is more focused on, we are trying to fix that. It's like the response of IT is, it's okay, we're going to be listening, right? We're not there yet, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to try to reduce testing cycle time, and we're going to try to increase the productivity. We're going to focus on Agile and DevOps. So in other words, basically IT, in this communication between IT and business, I think what's happening is that IT is badly communicating that really they're working on the means to get to the objectives that business really wants, which is business. All that business cares about is the outcomes, right? And of course, IT focuses on, we need to fix our engine to get there. So another important point is summarized of the study is that firms see, when we look at how are they trying to fix these things? Well, It's basically trying to increase the level of automation and to adopt what we call continuous testing. But unfortunately, when you look at what they're doing, it's still heavily, manual testing is still big. And this is very much in line also with my Agile survey, where I ask questions about testing in Forrester. And you can see even in that survey that between 2015 and 2017, the amount of manual testers didn't decrease much. So you can see that from an automation testing, both for functional or non-functional. You can see here the percentages, right? So software development practices that where automation is being applied, continuous integration, continuous delivery is strong. Agile development is pretty strong too, and I would say the combination of the two is also quite strong. So that's not too bad, but I was a little bit surprised, to be honest, about this test-driven development, TDD and BDD, and we explained quite clearly what it is. But it might be a bit surprising to you too, but that also reflects the amount of inquiries I get around this, where companies are trying to change the way they build software, putting testing in front of the development strategy, and sometimes using languages like Cucumber, domain specification languages like Cucumber to specify test scenarios and to deal with testing. And on the testing side, testing the real user experience is at the top. Continuous testing with and manual functional testing is also quite high, as you can see. I mean, it's really minimum, the difference between 51% and 53%, if you think about it, on 154, right? 2 points percentages, just a few respondents, right? So there is, the good news is that, of course, people are focusing on automating testing, and there's also a beginner focus on using AI for testing as well. And you can see this is exactly what I just mentioned a few minutes ago, that my own data shows the same, right? 2015, 2017, the percentage of those that responded to the question, how do you test? Well, always tested manually, went slightly down by 3%, from 49% to 46%. And then when you look at the other areas of automation, unit tests, functional tests from a UI level, API level, continuous testing at each code, check-in, non-functional testing, etc. Those have not really improved much. They're pretty flat, right? Automation we've reached this 44 to 50% target, and we haven't been improving much. And this is actually also in line with the data that I have in Forrester when we look about how DevOps and how the speed of delivery is not improving as much as well. The other important point is that we've all been talking about developer testers becoming more important, and you can see that actually that is something that is happening, but it's happening slowly. This shows what's the percentage increase in the type of testers, and 21% is of course the biggest number. You can say, wow, well, sounds like we are shifting testing into the hands of developers, but the number of those developer tester is still quite low, and the time that they spend on testing is also pretty low. I would say less than an hour a day doing functional and performance and functional and non-functional testing, automation testing. That's what developers kind of the numbers we have at this point. Now, we can't say that executives are really far from that, and I'll come back to that. I mean, far from understanding that we need to invest more, but it is funny because on the other hand, there is pressure on budget, and to be honest, IT costs as a goal for many IT organizations is never at the top of any organization in these last 2 years. and won't be, because it's more about creating value, it's more about getting new markets, it's more about innovating and less about cutting costs. However, from a testing perspective, this is what people, this is what our respondents claim, is that, there's budget pressure, we don't get enough money to do the transformation we need to do. There's also fragmentation around the technologies that are used, and as well as the skills, and the skills are a challenge, right? Because that change in testing becoming more technical, the use of AI or the use of less manual testing, and the fragmentation from a technology perspective, with omni-channel being, devices being different webs, and clouds, multiple different clouds, hybrid cloud, public cloud. It's just becoming more and more harder and difficult to test in those type of environments, and as well as getting access to reliable test environments, getting the right domain skills. I mean, these are all the issues, a lot of the issues that companies are running into. So what are the opportunities? Well, because basically improving testing, automating testing, turning to continuous testing, making more intelligent are the opportunities, and these are the benefits that that organizations expect, right? First of all, they expect that they can reduce costs. Replacing heads with automation obviously can bring cost savings, although it might need some initial investment. It will improve, they expect to improve employee productivity. Remember, we touched on that. It does and will improve the customer experience. So that's very much in line with, their number one goal in life, and increase customer satisfaction and revenue growth. So basically expectations, that the new technologies like AI and continuous testing can improve both customer experience and and employee experience, and make testing a better business and easier is the expectation and the goal for many organizations. But also, we see that poor quality software is in the books of companies, right? These are 3 examples of 10K SEC filings where quality is clearly highlighted in those writings at the executive level. That basically we care about speed, but we also care a lot about quality, because if the products don't operate as intended, the business can be badly affected, right? And you can see you can read these examples by yourself. So it's, that's good. I think the fact that executives have this message in their mind that because software create digital businesses, if that software is of poor quality, then the digital business will be suffering, and the growth will. So just a couple of points around tools. There is some, of course, I would say that it's always a people, process, and technology issue, and never just a technology one, right? So don't believe 2 vendors that tell you buy my tool and you'll get all your problems solved. None of my clients really do that. I encourage them not to say that, because we all know that it is the combination of these 3 things. However, when you talk about automation, technology is a must. And so you can see that this just tells you a little bit about where 44% of the firms have adopted some technology for improving the way they test. And my last point about this is that we also asked about, well, what is it that what are the top things that you would really like a technology vendor to address? And it's about it's enabling end-to-end testing, ability to test across different technology stacks, what I call omni-channel testing capabilities, ability to augment the test execution with intelligence, but also the ability to automate the design of the tests to address the business testers' requirements, the developers' requirements, the different personas of testing, right? Because it's not just developer tester, but it's also the business tester and the technical tester. And but also to model business outcomes using real user data. I think that's a really interesting opportunity in the era of digital customer experience. It is a growing requirement from customers, and connecting user data into testing makes you do really some interesting things, like being able to test the quality of outcomes, which is, you know, it's kind of a nirvana we've all been trying to chase, and I think AI now will start making that. We're seeing early signs of that being enabled. All right, so what are my recommendations? Well, first of all, we definitely do still need to test more, better, and faster. But to really be able to test more, better, and faster, it is important that we do that in an intelligent way. And probably it is adding some intelligence that will enable us to test more, better, and faster. And what is it? It's all based on this concept of continuous testing. So in other words, testing has to happen throughout the entire continuous delivery lifecycle. If you are transforming, and I know that many organizations are transforming into a digital, into a continuous delivery organization, well, then it's a must that you have to also test continuously. So that means basically start testing early on with shift left, basically starting at the ideation and planning stage, testing during the design build phase, testing during the continuous integration, and kicking off tests in an automated way for deploying and doing your gate checks in an automated way, releasing code and in production in an automated way, and also having looped in the loop, have that feedback loop automated, because that's what DevOps really does, right? And so testing has to be basically integrated into this into these continuous steps that happen one after the other and in parallel to development within each sprint, within sprints. And I think another important thing is that, I don't think technical and business testers will disappear anytime soon, and developers will take on testing, all the testing anytime soon. It depends on the types of markets you're in. It depends on the type of organization you are, where you might have more developer testers or technical testers or business testers. But definitely what's important is that, and we shouldn't look at AI as a way, to replace those roles, those jobs. Well, it will diminish, of course, some activities in some areas, and therefore pure manual testers that don't get up to speed on some of the new technologies. I urge you, if you are a manual tester, to skill up and learn about some of these new techniques and tools, because automation is happening anyway. But we should look at AI as augmenting the testers, the developer testers, the technical testers, and the business testers, rather than just replacing them. And giving intelligence to a tester means think about all the data that we can generate, looking at all the tests that fail, looking at the bugs that we find, look at the data in the in the various files that get stored in the logs. That data has golden insights, if we use some machine learning on it, that can help a tester really strategize, come up with a better strategy for his testing, what to test and what not to test in an automated way, or what to test or not to test at all, or how can I focus on the top business critical things rather than or on just the top critical technical things. So look at AI in a friendly way, as a way to help you as a tester. If you are a tester, if you are leading a testing organization, look at AI as a way to augment your testing capabilities, your testing folks and people. And so how is it that we put intelligence in continuous testing? Well, there's many opportunities. I don't have the time to go through all of these, but basically AI and machine learning can be applied in basically all of the steps, all of the different testing areas in continuous testing. But I would spend a few minutes just on that last production user experience monitoring, if you think about it, because that's where there is a lot of data that is generated, a lot of data that can be leveraged to do things, as I said. What are my users enjoying, in production? maybe those are areas I need to pay more attention to for testing, or what is it that they're not using, and maybe I can avoid testing those areas, or maybe not test them at all. And can I link the outcomes, what's the quality of the outcomes of those applications into production? Well, machine learning and AI can help a lot in there, but machine learning and AI can also be used here more towards the left, right? To optimize the life cycle of testing, can be used to help define better use cases and the requirements of testing together with business requirements, and help make the whole testing process a much more intelligent and faster and better way and better approach. And with that, I thank you very much, and I hand this back to my Eggplant friends. Thank you. Questions eventually?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Diego. So lots of new, interesting insights there. And the two key insights for me are, first, that IT and the business are just not aligned on the goals of testing. Roughly speaking, the business wants to focus on user experience, but IT really wants to focus on the speed and cost of testing. Second is that teams are still struggling to move to continuous testing. And maybe that's why that remains their top focus for IT. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes now talking about how Eggplant can help testing teams within digital businesses address both these challenges, massively increasing the level of test automation within your team and thus achieving continuous testing, and at the same time focusing on user experience and delivering products that maximize business outcomes. So these are the testing challenges that Eggplant has always been focused on: cost and speed, continuous delivery of testing, user experience. Not just does it work, but does it delight users? Does it achieve its outcome? Dealing with fragmentation, new dynamic frameworks, and also legacy, massive heterogeneous technology landscape we live in. Integrating into DevOps pipelines, ensuring not only that that whole production is efficient, but also that dev and ops teams, pre-production and production, are working together. And skills availability, huge demands on testers today in terms of technical skills, business knowledge, test process knowledge, product knowledge. It's really infeasible that you're going to find a huge scaled team that has all those skills. We need to start enabling people with different focuses, different skill sets to collaborate together. And interestingly, historically, as we look at these challenges, we've always seen a real trade-off between manual testing on the one hand, which is intelligent. It's not artificially intelligent, it's really intelligent, but it's slow. And automated testing, which has traditionally been regression testing, which is fast, it can keep up with the pace of DevOps, but it's not very intelligent. And I think this trade-off between intelligent but slow manual testing and fast but unintelligent automated regression testing really speaks to that point we just made about that tension between IT, which wants to go faster, and the business, which wants to focus on UX. And this is why we struggle to test intelligently at the speed of DevOps. So how does Eggplant achieve this? Well, we do this by, again, putting intelligence into your continuous testing. So continuous intelligent test automation using AI and machine learning to auto-generate more of the test assets, augmenting those intelligent humans with more automation capabilities for exploratory and regression testing, and also selecting the right test to maximize coverage, address risks, focus on business outcomes. We'll see that just in a minute. We test the full UX by coming at it from the user perspective, and that's not just functionality, it's performance, it's usability, it's accessibility. So we're really focusing on that whole UX, and not just the UX from a technical perspective, but testing business outcomes. I'll come back to that. We have patented technology that's all about being able to test any platform, any device, any technology, non-invasively. We have over 600 customers, so we've just about integrated with, I think, every DevOps tool there is. And we focus on providing tooling that's appropriate for maybe no-code and low-code tooling for business testers, right down to IDE-based testing for developer testers. But having this as a seamless integrated experience, so you're enabling collaboration between technical testers, domain experts, developers, and BAs. So how does that all work? Well, going around the pipeline here, Eggplant's very focused on going through that whole figure eight of the DevOps life cycle. And I really mean that. So I think a lot of times when you look at people addressing DevOps, they really have a bit of a gap at some point, usually in terms of how ops comes back into dev. But we start at the beginning of the process with automatically creating a model of the application under test. So we're creating a model of the application. We then generate snippets and data, that low-level fragments that really drive the system under test, or we can reuse existing assets from Selenium, from UFT. So we have a model, we have some snippets, and then we use AI to automatically generate test cases that really focus on key risk areas, areas that matter to the user, also optimizing for coverage to give you confidence, and of course still doing your regression testing. Once we've generated those test cases, we can execute those using our Universal Fusion engine, which can test any technology and at every level. So you can test at the UI framework, you can test at the API level, at the database level, at the unit level, real 360 testing. As I said before, we're testing the full UX, so functionality, performance, usability, accessibility. We then have a component called Release Insights, which is all about providing analytics using machine learning to provide tools around making that critical go, no-go decision. We have so much data in testing. We know what development's been done, who's done it, what was the life cycle, what's happened in the past. We know what testing's been done. We know the nature of the application. We know production data. We have all this information, and yet still I find that release management meetings are really held just on gut feel alone. Whereas here we can really inform, if we release now, do we think that's going to make the risk on customer experience go up or down, the risk on our development velocity go up or down? Really giving insight there. We then have synthetic and real user monitoring to understand the technical aspects and the user aspects of how the application, can be thick client, can be web, can be mobile, is really being used in production. And then we have business insights, understanding how those two things impact each other. How does the page load speed impact conversion rates? How do exceptions on this page impact drop-off rates and make people leave your funnel? We understand that, and then we feed that back into testing, so you can take that into account, not only in how you're maybe auto-generating some of your test assets, but also which user journeys you're choosing. So that's the general fill, and of course that's all integrating with your DevOps pipeline, be it Jira, Jenkins, Bamboo, GitHub, whatever, Puppet, Chef. That's all fully integrated. Now, what does that really look like in practice? So here we have an Eggplant model executing tests against the Citi mobile banking app. So our business tester and our technical tester have worked together to generate this model. The model is then using a whole lot of data, risk data from Git and Jira, risk data from analyzing the code in the application itself, maybe what testing's been done, taking business data from production and feeding this all in to our machine learning engine, and using this to generate test cases that focus on what really matters to users, and also, of course, where we're most likely to find defects and how we can optimize that user experience. Here we have Eggplant using AI-powered intelligent image recognition and analysis to ensure that a website, in this case the NHS website, complies with accessibility regulations and best practice. So visually inspecting an application or a web page to understand the usability of that and how that complies with various usability heuristics or accessibility, becoming a hugely important area of all application design, and Eggplant's got that covered. And finally, we have Eggplant monitoring a live retail website, monitoring the technical behaviors, such as page load time, monitoring the business outcomes, such as someone making a purchase, and then understanding the relationship between the two, as you can see here. So for example, understanding which pages really impact whether someone makes a purchase or not, and then automatically feeding that back into the testing process. So if a page slows down by 1 second in your testing, rather than simply reporting that the page is slowed down by 1 second, you can say that it's slowed down by 1 second, which means a 7% reduction in conversions, which means $120,000 per week of revenue lost because of this reduction in performance. And this is from a real example of the Cook Food website. And I think that just has to be the epitome of aligning testing and the business. We've got testing making predictions of revenue impact in an automated fashion. So by putting intelligence into continuous testing, Eggplant can help automate the creation of tests, focus testing on finding bugs and optimizing business outcomes, and testing the whole user experience. It can make testing fast and intelligent and help bring IT and the business together, which, as Diego highlighted earlier, is one of the key challenges facing digital businesses today. So that's it. Thank you very much for joining us. A special thank you to Diego for making the time to be with us today. And I think we just have a few minutes for questions.
So Diego, we've spoken a bit about the business tester. I spoke about testing business outcomes, and I know you've been kind of one of the thought leaders on the business tester. So one of the questions I hear people asking is, where does this type of testing belong? Does that belong in the IT team? Does it belong in more of a product marketing team? Is it a business team? Is it a separate team? Obviously anything can live anywhere, but where do you think it should sit to be the most successful?
Within the team that is building the product. So basically, I mean, we are seeing, I would say, a more general trend of IT now being embedded in business. So we've got these, embedded developers, and so if you look at it from that perspective, it kind of makes less sense as a question for customers that are doing that. Probably for customers that have a centralized IT in the old, of the old days, then the question becomes a bit more sensitive and you have to figure out how to do this. But I would say, because if you're really doing continuous delivery, Agile, and DevOps, and you've got these integrated product teams, the product owner, right, of that product, the business representatives of that product, the business tester is someone, it's either, in that product owner's team, but it's part of the organization, which can be sitting in the business. But if it's a modern, as I said, but if it's a modern organization, chances are they're all in the same squad and in the same tribe with the developers and the rest of the other roles.
Yeah, I really like the phrase the team making the product. One area where I've seen people struggling with this is IoT, the Internet of Things, because when you think about it, IoT is all about a really heterogeneous set of devices made by different vendors, all collaborating to achieve a purpose or a use case in the real world. So each one of those vendors are they're only creating one part of that overall solution. And that sort of takes away from them the ability to test the product as a whole. So as we go into this world where any one software product vendor is really only making one part of the overall system, do you think that's going to have a big impact on testing, and kind of what advice would you give to people in that world?
Well, I guess that's really what you're asking is, and you're making you caught me there, I would say, because everything that we talk about, sometimes you really need to go down to specifics, and the specifics in this case is the type of markets, right? If we're talking a bank, what I said is perfectly, applicable. If we're talking automotive, technical, scientific industries where you've got, the mechatronic industry where you've got devices, you've got embedded, then what you just mentioned is more of an issue, I guess. And so in that case, of course, component tests, you can generalize if you want. Software is kind of also getting constructed that way. So perhaps you can apply some of the concepts in a similar way, but you've got, there are different types of tests that need to be done, but I guess whether IoT or not, applications are being broken up into smaller components. They're not siloed anymore, right? They're, as a trend, microservices, container, all that stuff is breaking things up into smaller pieces. And so, you know, unit testing is done by the developers. Component testing is done perhaps, you know, already at a functional level. Those that are in charge of that, the vendor that is in charge of its own component. But then there's someone that has to be in charge of the integration testing, end-to-end testing. And that's where the business comes in, I guess, in some cases as well, because, you know, my company buys 5 products, my IT integrates them, and I am the guy, and I want to test that with my data.
Interesting. One of the things that came out in the survey, which comes out in really every survey about test, is budget pressure. One of the things I'm often surprised about, though, is given that really strong relationship between performance testing and revenue, I mean, it's really measurable, why do so many teams claim budget pressure as a barrier to performance testing? I mean, does this just mean that test teams aren't very good at making business cases? Are the business not listening once you say test? It doesn't make sense to me. What's going on there, do you think?
So I think it's on one side it's a little bit of a you know, an older trend and keeps going, but coming from the past definitely, because testing used to be an afterthought, used to be something that, well, you know, if we're late, let's deploy, and by the way, we'll save some money. But you know, I'm surprised, because I think that it's very clear also that all the data shows that it's not just about speed, it's also about quality. And but historically, really, people think, you know, don't think that testing is a first-class citizen. That's the way we've all thought about testing. But nowadays, it is, and it is because software is a, you know, such an important component to the business success that if you get it wrong, I mean, as you saw in the slides that I was showing, right? Quality is up in the 10 filings in the books, in stuff that executives and boards read and write. Yeah. So on one side, I think there is a little bit of that miscommunication. Sometimes also the data, I would say, is not. It's more of a political battle, like, you know, let's get more money. But I would. Yeah, because I think that within transformations, eventually it might be, it depends on the organization, right? It depends on the leaders that lead quality. Yeah. Some of them are better than others in making the case that testing is a first-class citizen and not any longer an afterthought that doesn't deserve attention and money.
Yeah, let's hope so.
So make it real, right? It is real in some cases, probably. If people cut or people don't invest, it might be in testing. But I'm seeing less and less of that. I'm seeing more focus around the fact that I find clients less prepared about the fact that if you're transforming to digital and you're transforming your development, you really have to transform your QA and testing as well, and that needs money.
Yeah, definitely. More related to that, one of the results as well that we saw in your survey was an increase in the focus on the developer tester. But at the same time, we also see that skills availability is one of the biggest challenges in testing. We know that worldwide, there's a shortage of development skills for all endeavors. So this seems a bit weird. On the one hand, we're saying there's a really big shortage of a certain set of skills. We're having trouble hiring them. But at the same time, we're going to redefine testing to require that skill more. How do you reconcile those two? How do you think that's really going to play out? How's that going to work?
Well, first of all, I think the way I read that data point is that the 21% on the developers, right, is a big number compared to the other percentages that we had there, which was, I believe, 6% and 6% and 6%. Yeah. But 21% of what, right? Today, it's undeniable that most of the testers sit in that top line of the technical testers. And so, you know, an increase of 6% of thousands is much higher than a 21% increase of hundreds.
I
right?
see.
So that's the way I explain that data point. That's not to neglect the fact that we're trying to move developers to get more involved in testing. It's not happening as fast as everybody would like that to, but it's also undeniable that there's a big skills issue, a talent issue, I would say, overall in roles, not just, you know, software developers and data scientists and all these new roles. There is talent. There is a problem with talent, and I guess people just hope to fight to get the best.
Yeah, yeah. And when you hear people say to you that they expect to see more, I guess, developer testers, how do you see that? Do you read that as people saying, you know, we'd like to get our developers doing more unit testing? Do you see that as people saying we'd like to get our developers doing more product level testing? Is that saying we'd like our sort of technical product testers to become more developer-y? How do you read that?
All of the above. I read it as, you know, technical testers need to, so because we're going into this world of, you know, integrated product teams, bigger collaboration, technical testers need to understand the language of the developers, and actually need to understand the programming languages, not just the language of the developers,
yeah,
but the language used for building code. Not necessarily meaning that they have to be able to program in that language, but at least understand the scripts and the automation. And so that's one. The second thing is the demand for developers to get more involved in testing. Unit testing is not a testing job, in my opinion. It's a developer's job. It shouldn't even be called, you know, the word testing should disappear there. That's
interesting.
That maybe people, you know, misunderstand this and saying, of course, if I'm writing code, why am I not unit testing all my code as a developer? I don't need a tester to tell me that. I don't need a tester to write a test case for me for my unit tests. That's stuff I need to do, and I know I need to do it. It's like the data scientists do unit testing for the data models, right?
Yeah.
It's really more about developers learning to automate a bit more, functional testing as well, probably driven by a technical tester working with them in the team. It's about developer testers doing a bit more of performance testing. I mean, that's probably even more targeted to them. In other words, they know how to, you know, tweak things in their architecture, what becomes a container, what not, where that container sits or not, and things like that, where they can early on, and some of the issues that can be caught early on in the early phases to improve performance. And I think those are all areas where we would like to see developers take on more testing, but it also has to be the type of products, right? There are domains, business domains and products that lend themselves to not have a to not have a technical or a business tester. I mean, if you think Google, right? Google doing search or mail, do you need a business guy to tell the developer the functionality of an email and what can be improved? It's kind of, you know, not needed. It's different from someone that needs business knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. DevOps is obviously a huge topic, and you often talk about sort of testing at the speed of DevOps. One of the things that people have in their minds when they think about DevOps are these automated pipelines, right? That you check in your code, you build, you test. If it passes, you promote it to the staging environment. Maybe you move it to production. Now, of course, I'm not really aware of anyone at the moment who has that fully automated, in the sense that there's still a human checking those test results, making sure they're happy before that gets pushed to live. Have you seen anyone who's genuinely got a fully automated sort of quality gate on their DevOps pipeline? And assuming the answer is no, how far away do you think we are to getting there?
Well, I actually think there are clients that are, I mean, you know, the unicorns do this, right? I mean, how can Amazon deploy features in production every 11.6 seconds if somebody had to stop and check stuff, right? And companies that build similar things, you know, do the same. And so, but when you look at the more traditional companies, right, they today 28% of them can deploy once a month, and deploying once a month, there are some manual steps in there, of course. I would say on one side, one thing I tell those clients is like, don't get concerned about that, because you can automate a decision making of pushing a release in production with workflow if you have automated your tests, right? If you've automated 80% of your tests, you can put an automated gate there to kind of, if it doesn't go above the 80%, we will not go into production. But if it does, we're confident that this can really go into production. And so there are some customers that are doing that, and not just the unicorns. If your question is about where is the industry today, as I said, 28% can deliver releases in production once a month or sooner, and that sooner bit, the percent goes really quite down. In 1% can do it daily, and about 8-9% can do it weekly. Yeah. Now the question, I guess, is do they really need to go faster than that? I don't, maybe there are clients that don't need to. I think we need to start, and we're planning on doing that, to ask different questions like, are you delivering as fast as the business really needs you to, rather than are you increasing your delivery of speed in general, just to kind of for the sake of it?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. And it was one of the results in the survey. Every IT team I talk to at the moment is obsessed with speed. They just wanted to deliver faster and faster, and yet everyone I know at the same time finds it really annoying that every time you want to use any app on your phone, you have to upgrade the app first. You're just getting updates every day for these apps, and you sort of don't want to upgrade your app every single time you use it. So I definitely think we've probably hit kind of peak interest in speed, and we need to start looking at how fast do we need to, why, and what do users need. I think that's a really good point.
And also raise the the need for quality. It's not just speed.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you ask a lot of these teams, so you need to deliver faster. Well, faster what? How do you know that these things you're delivering are actually important at all? Given that we still live in a world where most features are not used by most users,
right?
Are we just running for the sake of running? And I definitely think we've got into that habit. And yeah, it's a really interesting point. Last question for you. I think some people a while ago had this view that the world was going to start getting less fragmented technologically, and clearly that was wrong. I mean, just the breadth of hardware devices, of software platforms, frameworks, the advent now of a lot more credible cross-platform environments. I mean, technology fragmentation is just increasing, and the speed of change, especially in web frameworks, is increasing massively. Are you seeing this impacting testing and testing approaches? Are people now having to make their testing approaches far less technology specific, and how are they doing that?
Less technology specific. That requires, I think the smart guys get it and probably do it, right? When they go for some of those platforms that abstraction layers that don't tie you too much to a specific cloud, for example. Multi-cloud is a reality. So I think there is clients don't want to be don't like lock-in.
Yep.
And so I think that is and microservices and containers and stack out Kubernetes and all those things kind of are portable across clouds, and clients don't want to stick to one cloud only. If you look at cloud being a very important trend, right? And one of the technologies, but it's undeniable that there are areas where you can't do much about it. And like if clients, when you look at the mobile device itself, right, phones and iPhones and Android, how many choose the native platform versus web mobile versus platforms that can allow you to build once and deploy in many places. I think they take more of a differentiated strategy there. What is it really that I care about, that my business is, is betting on this, and I need to be differentiating, and I want to use and I want to leverage the platform capabilities. They go for native in those areas, but in other areas, maybe 80% of the rest of the stuff they build, they try to adopt technologies that are not, or platforms and tools that are not binding them, using open source frameworks like Selenium or Appium, and open source I think is playing a big role to kind of keep that independence.
Cool. Well, that brings us to the end of the webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us, and our special guest star Diego. Hope you all learned something. Please get in touch. Thank you very much.